right. They're right by us right now.
For years, America's fascination and fixation
This is nuts.
with possible life outside of our world came through the lens of theater like War of the Worlds.
What men first thought were meteors or the often ridiculed flying saucers are in reality the flaming vanguard of the invasion from Mars.
A fervor in the 50s and 60s that generated fear over flying saucers.
Are the flying saucers real? What are they? Where do they come from?
Alien figures with arms, legs, and laser beams. But more than a half century later, that fervor is back. This time fueled in part by some modern-day videos that seemingly defy explanation. Like this 2004 sighting captured by a Navy jet off the coast of San Diego, where a mysterious oblong object first appears to break lock on an infrared sensor, almost instantaneously accelerates and vanishes from sight. Or this 2015 encounter from a jet off the coast of Florida.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh.
The aircraft gently rotating in hurricane-force winds.
There's anything.
But these clips are hardly the creations of a sci-fi studio. They're unedited footage released.
It's right in your face. But hey, who gonna believe anyway? Right? You ain't gonna believe it. Comment below.
From the federal government, with recent congressional hearings spotlighting how serious the issue has become.
As we convene here, UAP are in our airspace, but they are grossly underreported. These sightings are not rare or isolated, they are routine.
Former F-18 pilot Ryan Graves, with a decade of service in the U.S. Navy, refers to UAP, or Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, which he warned lawmakers represent a national security risk. In your testimony to Congress, you described having your squadron for years seeing a series of complex maneuvers that were hard to explain. How common was this, and what were they seeing?
We upgraded our radar systems, and when we flew with the new radars, we started seeing objects on our radar displays that we weren't seeing just the flight prior with the older radar. As we upgraded all of our jets and all of our radars, we were seeing these on pretty much a daily basis.
Graves said the pilots would mostly fly in an area off the coast of Virginia Beach, and at times had to move or cancel flights based on the risks that these objects posed. Famously, Graves told members of the House Oversight Committee about a close encounter his squadron had in 2014.
Two F-18 Super Hornets were split by a UAP. The object, described as a dark gray or a black cube inside of a clear sphere, came within 50 feet of the lead aircraft.
Graves said he spoke to that lead pilot right after he canceled the flight.
He had a look of shock on his face, and this is someone that I had been flying with for years at this point, almost on a daily basis, and he just went, I almost hit one of those damn things. And he didn't even have to describe it because we knew what he was talking about because it had been such an issue at this point.
Graves hasn't ruled out possible explanations like high-end technology or the work of foreign adversaries, but he says some aspects of the sightings cannot be explained. And through his new group, Americans for Safe Aerospace is calling for more robust channels to report UAPs and government transparency. This as scientists interested in these baffling developments, like Robert Powell, are weighing in. How fast was that aircraft going in Texas?
It was traveling at a minimum of 1,900 miles an hour. But what's different about it is that it was hovering before it took off.
If Robert Powell, co-founder for the Scientific Coalition on UAP Studies, looks familiar, that's because you might have seen him recently in Steven Spielberg's Netflix docuseries Encounters.
I think whatever people saw was intelligently controlled, and it was not manufactured by the United States or any other nation for that matter.
Powell is a chemist and nanotechnology expert who's been studying UAPs for 17 years and zeroed in on an event in Stephenville, Texas in '08.
You don't have to believe in UFOs to believe residents in Stephenville, Texas saw something in the sky last week.
Which NBC News covered at the time, where some 300 people reported seeing a foreign aircraft with bright lights and bizarre movements.
I saw two red glows. They glowed, and then they kind of faded, and glowed again.
immediately shadowed by what appeared to be fighter jets, so Powell interviewed some of the witnesses and obtained FAA radar from that night using a Freedom of Information request.
What do we know about what the government initially said and then later said about the episode that night?
Well, initially the government said there were no F-16s in the air. However, I knew there were because I got the radar data from the FAA and I could track the F-16s.
While the military later acknowledged the presence of fighter jets, other details remained sparse. Powell used the data he collected to calculate the speed and coordinates of the spacecraft, or whatever was in the sky over central Texas, and arrived at some stunning conclusions.
The acceleration to go from standing still to 1,900 miles an hour in 10 seconds or less, depending on how you calculate it, is anywhere from 10 to 20 G-forces.
Powell says an F-16 moving in a straight line can't come close to that 10 to 20 G-force.
The only way we can do that is firing a missile.
There is no aircraft, human-made aircraft that you're aware of, that can accelerate at 10 G.
No. Not with a human being in it.
Powell says that type of otherworldly acceleration is not an isolated incident. Just look at the San Diego event almost 20 years ago, known as the Tic Tac event, based on the appearance of the aircraft, complete with first-hand testimony from one of the 4 pilots who witnessed it.
As we pulled nose onto the object, within about a half mile of it, it rapidly accelerated in front of us and disappeared. Our wingmen, roughly 8,000 feet above us, lost contact. So as we started to turn back towards the east, the controller came up and said, "Sir, you're not going to believe this, but that thing is at your cat point, roughly 60 miles away in less than a minute. You can calculate the speed."
Powell says a conservative estimate of that acceleration, based on the pilot testimony, was 256 G-forces, or a maximum speed of 28,000 miles per hour.
So this is the Tic Tac video. And so what you're looking at is an infrared video where white is hot on this video.
As we review the footage, Powell says something is missing, the radar that goes with it.
If there is technology that allows us to calculate speeds that are unlike anything humankind has seen before, why has it not been disclosed?
That's my question, is the government has to have that data, right? They didn't keep the videos and throw away the radar data. So they have to have that data.
Do you think they're withholding it because it might substantiate arguments that it's not human technology?
You're asking me to read their mind, right? and I don't know. I mean, it could be they're withholding it for that, or they're withholding it for national security reasons.
As the search for evidence continues, however you define that word, renowned scientists like Dr. James Webb at Florida International University remain skeptical.
What about the anecdotal evidence when you hear hundreds of people reporting the same thing?
Well, then they saw the same thing, but they still doesn't tell me what that thing was.
They want something that so far has proven elusive. Concrete, immutable facts.
But you're a scientist. You're an astrophysicist.
Correct.
You're not taking anything for granted.
Have to be proven.
Do you feel like right now in this whole narrative over UAPs and non-human biologics, too much is being taken at face value?
I've been seeing this for 60 years. I grew up in the 60s when this first all started. They were called UFOs then. Still are now in many circles. And the same thing is being repeated now. But nothing has ever transpired. Nothing has been proven. So until you prove to me it's extraterrestrial, I'm sorry, I can't accept it.
In lectures to both undergraduate and graduate level students,
I talked about some of the weirdest things I've seen. That image is weird.
Webb pushes the importance of the scientific method, a process defined by observing something, making a prediction, testing that prediction, and if you can't substantiate it, modifying your theories. He says it applies to his work with quasars, supermassive black holes that print and shoot out material at close to the speed of light, and also applies to unexplained sightings in the sky.
The camera can lie to you, as we all know. Until you prove what that really is, and it has to go through a lot of steps. You know exactly how far away it is, exactly how big it is. Tell me exactly how fast it's spinning. How do you know how fast it's spinning? How do you measure its velocity? That's what you need to know if you're a scientist.
So even if it's a guesstimate, even if, for example, a Navy commander tells Congress, I saw a tic-tac looking object, and in a split second it went 60 miles away, that is not quantifiable, in your opinion?
That's one amazing tic-tac. You can't just say make a theory and say it's alien spacecraft and go with that. It's not science.
What do you think they're seeing then?
I don't know what they're seeing. I don't know if they're aliens. I don't know whether they're aliens. I don't know whether they're other aircraft. I don't know whether they're swamp gas clouds. Maybe their equipment's malfunctioning. I don't know what it is.
But Robert Powell says a military asset would pick up the transponder signals from any earthly aircraft, commercial or foreign. So when you start running through the other options, scientists and UAP science enthusiasts seem stuck.
What is the likely explanation of what that is?
I have no likely explanation for that is reasonable.
Neither does Ryan Graves, the former F-18 pilot, who, like Powell, focuses not just on the incredible capabilities of these aircraft, but what they seem to be capable of doing all at once.
Yes, we do have the technology to keep something stationary in the air, is a valid comment. We also have the technology to fly at 0.6 to 0.8 Mach, and we have technology to go over the speed of sound. I'm not aware of technology that allows us to do all three of those at whim in a single platform all day.
As for where we go from here, members of Congress, like Senator Chuck Schumer from New York and Mike Rounds of South Dakota, have introduced legislation to declassify government records related to UAP. With Schumer writing, the American public has a right to learn about technologies of unknown origins, non-human intelligence, and unexplainable phenomena. But with little by way of government secrets revealed so far,
The arrival of a space ship in Washington.
the onus may fall on advocates like Graves to move the ball forward.
Are you planning on holding Washington accountable when it comes to transparency and reporting back what they're finding?
We have to. We have to, because the American people are not going to just trust the conclusions of the government on this conversation. That doesn't mean that we have to spill the beans on our ways and means and our technology capabilities, but the government also doesn't have the right to